Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. The time has finally come for me to start building the first MOC in this Andor series. And subconsciously there's always some pressure and stress about whether or not it will be good or even get a lot of likes. I don't like to focus on how many likes or views stuff gets, but it's hard to not let it affect you sometimes. Brushing all of that aside to the best of my abilities, the first MOC in this series will be of Morlana One, specifically the street scenes outside of the club. The MOC will have a black border around it, acting as the base. The two main structures will be dark bluish gray buildings, in between them will be a staircase, and the club entrance will be on the right side of the MOC. Before I started building, I needed to clean up and organize my workspace a bit. It wasn't too messy, but I wanted a fresh, clean start to this build series. I grabbed myself a cup of hot coffee, put on some podcasts, and of course also listened to the Andor soundtrack to calm my nerves and hype me up. I started off using two large 16x16 plates. I then added two 8x16 plates and two 2x16 plates to create the base. This will be the size of every MOC in this build series besides the finale. Next, I connected all the plates using some 2x4 bricks. I noticed something was off about one of my red bricks. It was a Mega Blocks brick.
That man's an imposter!
Not in my MOCs. After disposing of the imposter brick, I got back to building the black border. I added black plates all around the front of the MOC and a couple on the sides. No need to have the border go all around the MOC since the back won't be seen. I then added some black 2x4 bricks onto those. I don't use the color black often and noticed that so many of my black parts were actually really scuffed up and dirty. Maybe the shiny color makes these marks all the more noticeable, but it was hard to find pieces in good condition. I might need to go to the Mall of America and get some new black parts from the Pick-a-Brick wall. After laying down the bricks, I added some long black plates onto those, and then added some black tiles onto the plates. I again tried to use tiles that weren't super scuffed up. It's not a huge deal because in pictures it shouldn't be super noticeable. Next it was time to begin filling in some of the gaps with whatever bricks fit. And I also began mapping out where the buildings would be and where I wanted to use the snot technique for the ground. Once I had that all figured out, I added some 2x4 bricks where the ground was going to be. I added them in this checkered pattern for absolutely no reason other than I liked the way it looked on camera. The bricks fit perfectly flush once they were put on their sides. And after some movie magic, the ground was pretty much finished. I liked the dark bluish gray lines I added that split up the light bluish gray. Next, I wanted to work on the club entrance. I knew the angle of this door would be a little complicated, but after a lot of trial and error, I came up with a design that worked pretty well and was stable. One of my favorite parts to use to get these angles is these cheese slopes. This is the second part of the door, which I guess is the actual door, but I used cheese slopes again, bracket pieces, and modified bricks to get this near perfect angle. This works perfect for sci-fi doors, especially when you double it. Another fun technique that crawled out of the woodwork was using these grill pieces on top of each other, but the one on top is flipped over. It creates these tiny little holes that look like they could be drains or even little power plugins. I had a lot of fun during this build session experimenting with greeble designs. I felt like I really got to go back to my MOC building roots where I would build crazy greebled Star Wars MOCs, especially Coruscant MOCs, using tons of dark bluish gray parts. For this design, I used these ladder pieces and this other bar part that is new. I also added some lamps using these bar pieces and some trans yellow minifig heads. It was day 2 now and my nerves were finally starting to disappear. I started the day by duplicating what I had built on the right side on the left now. I thought it would be good to have the same design, so they acted as almost end caps. I then started working on the light bluish gray ground again. I wanted to add some white hexagonal arrows. Another thing I worked on was the staircase. The staircase is much smaller than what it was in the initial sketch. I like it better this way honestly, and really like the curve of it. I used a hose piece as the arm rail. Moving on, I decided it was time to tackle the bubble window that the dancers are in. I used this windscreen piece that I recently got off Bricklink and some curved gray tiles that fit perfectly around the window. Once I put this window up, I got really excited because the MOC was finally starting to feel a lot like Morlana One. I then added another lamp and some signs. This sign is custom printed from Firestar Toys. I also made this little control box for communication using lots of printed pieces, tiles, and some snot bricks. I had been neglecting the back a little bit and needed to build it up some more. I also made room to add another bubble window that will stick out over the staircase. I wanted to use some pieces I rarely use and came across a couple of these plates with bars on the side. I was curious if they would stack onto each other, and sure enough they did. And turned sideways, they created a really cool texture for greebling. One of my favorite pieces that adds a really subtle but nice texture are these dark bluish gray crate pieces. They are able to stack on top of each other, which is really useful. I then added a light bluish gray power box to both sides of the MOC. The MOC was close to being finished. I just needed to build everything up and then figure out what I wanted to do for the roof. I decided on using some black slopes to create this rounded roof design. This was really inspired by some of my older Star Wars MOCs. I actually really like the black coloring on top of the MOC and the bottom. I then tiled off the top of the MOC with some black tiles and also used the snot technique to fill in the gaps with large panels. I also added some pipes and other silver greebles. It was now time to add some last minute details like minifigures and accessories. This opalescent color is slowly becoming one of my favorite LEGO colors. I'm putting it behind the minifigure so it'll hopefully create interesting lighting in the final photos. Like I said earlier, a lot of my bricks were just really scuffed up and dirty. I wanted to try and clean some of it off and used this glasses cleaner cloth to wipe down the MOC. It actually worked really well, and I will definitely be using this again. One of the last bits of detail were these trans clear tiles and rounded tiles. It is raining on Morlana One, so these tiles are meant to represent puddles of rainwater. Now that the MOC is done, I take photos of it in my Lightbox and edit them in Photoshop.